Good Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock and time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little later in the show. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, will join us to talk Browns. And we begin by talking Browns as well. Last week, Browns signed Rodney McLeod, free agent safety. And McLeod posts this, getting after it, working out, trying to get ready for his time with the Browns. Did play in Jim Schwartz's system, high PFF grade as well with the Titans last year. So Rodney McLeod brings a veteran presence to that safety room to go along with Juan Thornhill and Grant Delpit. But again, McLeod, much needed veteran piece to add to that safety room. Let's welcome in Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Cory, just your thought. I loved the signing of McLeod. I thought they needed a veteran. They went out and got one.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah, they definitely needed to go get a veteran presence. And again, McLeod's brought in to be that third safety. You know, in dime packages, they always bring a third safety on the field. And last year, that was Ronnie Harrison. But Ronnie Harrison wasn't really a guy that you trusted to be on the field too often. So that's a pretty significant upgrade to bring in a guy like McLeod, who, again, isn't going to take snaps from Delpit, isn't going to take snaps from Thornhill, but he's a third guy you can trust to put on the field when you have to put a third safety on the field, which a year ago for Joe Woods, that was pretty frequently. And Jim Schwartz's dime usage is pretty similar. So and it helps that McLeod has played with Jim Schwartz quite a bit over the years. So as guys like Delpit, Thornhill too, they're still relatively young guys, veterans in the league, but he can help those guys communicate, help those guys coach them up a little bit to learn the new defense. The secondary is still really young. So again, a solid veteran presence in a room that really needed a solid veteran presence.
The secondary is probably going to be asked to do a little bit different things than it did under Joe Woods. How important do you think it was to get a guy who understands what Jim Schwartz wants from his safeties and his secondary?
Yeah, I think that's vital. I think it's really vital when you are, especially for a team that needs to compete this year. Like the Browns need to compete this year. And so getting a veteran dude who can come in and you know, if a guy like Grant Delpit does struggle to pick up under a new defensive coordinator, like McLeod can start if you need him to. I don't think that's ultimately their plan, but that's a guy that can start. But again, setting expectations, knowing the lingo, the communication. Again, a lot of these defenses are the same on the field, but there's different lingo for them. So having a guy who can coach up younger players on cover 4 actually means this now instead of this, things like that. Is huge. And we saw for a team last year that really lacked veteran leadership, especially when Anthony Walker Jr. went down, signing veterans at defensive tackle, signing veterans at safety. Like they really went out of their way to make sure that they bring back Anthony Walker Jr. as well, obviously. So they really went out of their way to add veterans, add leaders, and add strong voices to every level of their defense this year.
So when you look at this roster, what areas do you think Andrew Berry is still actively trying to upgrade? As rookie minicamp is Friday, so it's this week. What areas do you think he's still trying to actively upgrade?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think probably a third running back is on the table somewhere. I think them not drafting a running back instills a sense of confidence into Jerome Ford. I do still think a third one is going to be added outside of a UDFA and Hassan Hall from Georgia Tech. Linebacker, I don't know if they're going to add. I would probably add one more, but it seems like they're pretty content with Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jacob Phillips. What the struggle there is all 4 of those guys suffered season-ending injuries a year ago. So they really need those 4 to be healthy if those are the 4 they're going to count on. I thought Tony Fields played pretty well when he had to come on the field. But outside of that, you got a lot of really unproven guys at linebacker. So if you're banking on those, 3-4 guys, you better bank on health as well, which is kind of scary, at least for Jacob Phillips as well, which he might be fighting for a roster spot. But running back is the big one that sticks out to me. Outside of that, it really feels like they did a good job of rounding out the roster. Linebacker, running back, one of those 2 positions.
All right, yeah, we'll take a look at running back in a little bit. Let's take a look at some of the free agent linebackers that are still out there. And you touched on it. The pickings out here are pretty slim. So Deion Jones, we saw him a season ago when everybody kind of got hurt. He was okay, I guess. Jayon Brown is a guy that does have he was with the Raiders last year. He does have Titans ties, so I guess there's that with Jim Schwartz with the Titans last couple of years. And then Zach Cunningham, another one. Any of those names intrigue you? I'm with you that everybody that you're kind of counting on is coming off an injury. So you just wonder, a lot of times there's ancillary injuries. It's a physical game, especially for those linebackers.
Yeah, so again, those are all slim pickings. So all of those names are names I wouldn't feel comfortable like bringing in to start. I mean, Zach Cunningham has had his stints. He got paid by the Texans. Like they gave him a big contract, but he bottomed out pretty quickly after that. Obviously, Deion Jones isn't the same player he was early in his career, where he was able to run up the seam and make interceptions down the field. That's not who he was for the Browns last year. But if they follow the trend of let's just bring back the same group, let's see if an improved front four improves linebacker play. Deion Jones on a cheap deal could be in the cards for them. Jayon Brown's a little bit more athletic. He's a little bit smaller, a little bit more athletic though, who's had some stints of dominant play throughout his career as well. But over the past few years, none of these three linebackers are really guys that you're like, oh yeah, I would feel really comfortable. That would really round out the room. But at this point, you're trying to maybe add another body, because I feel like unless they make a trade for a guy on a rookie contract who is under a new regime or something like that, you're not getting a quality linebacker at this phase of free agency.
Yeah, I can't argue with that rationale at all. Now, there are a couple of names that are intriguing as far as edge rushers or defensive tackles that are still out there. So Matt Ioannidis, defensive tackle. There's Shelby Harris, another DT. Again, these are older guys. Melvin Ingram, that's got its long in the tooth, but still pretty productive. Justin Houston, and then Banagu also. Any of those guys intriguing? I know you went Ika, you went McGuire. That might. Jim Schwartz likes to play a lot of them. I still feel like if you could get me an edge rusher that could be productive in 20, 25 snaps, I'd feel that much better?
Yeah, so when I look at defensive tackle and I look at Mo Hurst and Tristan Hill, the two guys they signed outside of Dalvin Tomlinson, they gave them next to no guaranteed money. I don't think Mo Hurst actually had any guaranteed money. So to me, that screams those two guys are brought in to fuel competition with guys like Jordan Elliott, with guys with Tommy Togiai, with guys like Perrion Winfrey. Not necessarily locks to make the roster, but guys you really want to raise the floor with. And then, if they fight it out and they win roster spots, that's great. So when you really look at it, it's Dalvin Tomlinson, Siaki Ika are really the only two locks in that room that I would say, and that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. So a guy like Matt Ioannidis, who has some inside-out versatility, would be a huge signing, I think, at this phase in free agency, because I do think he starts. If he were to get signed, he'd come in and start next to Dalvin Tomlinson. That allows Siaki Ika to ease into a rotational role. That allows Perrion Winfrey to be a healthy scratcher, maybe not even be on the team when we kind of look at it. That it allows Jordan Elliott to really have to fight for a roster spot. So I just feel uneasy about potentially Mo Hurst or Tristan Hill being your starting defensive tackle or starting Siaki Ika right away. So adding another guy to the room with some veteran presence again, and a ton of starting experience with Washington and Carolina would be huge for this team. And then going to defensive end, I do think they still like Alex Wright a lot, Okoronkwo, Myles Garrett. So I think and then Isaiah McGuire. Isaiah Thomas is there too. I don't think he's a lock to make the roster. I think they have a solid four-man rotational with Wright and McGuire outside of Okoronkwo and Garrett. But what I do think they need is that designated pass rusher. So the Melvin Ingram type, the Justin Houston type, the Ben Banagu type, a guy who's really just coming in obvious passing situations to pin his ears back. Not a guy you're going to stick on the field when, you got to plan for the run very often, but a guy you can just stick outside on the outside shoulder of Myles Garrett, somebody you can stick on the outside shoulder of Okoronkwo and just, let him get after the quarterback. And so a veteran guy like Ingram, Houston, or a young guy, Ben Banagu, who was a former second-round pick, extremely athletic, but didn't really pan out with the Indianapolis Colts. But if you tell him to come in and be a designated pass rusher, you're only coming on the field when you have to pin your ears back and get after the quarterback. He'd be really cheap too. So I see the intrigue with a guy like Ben Banigou as well.
Yep, and you're going to see a lot of that with Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz will have guys that have defined roles on that defensive line as well. This is kind of interesting. So Scott Pioli, former general manager in the NFL, on which late-round picks deserve some attention?
Luke Wypler from Ohio State, who was also drafted in the 6th round by the Cleveland Browns. Luke is another player, again, who has a lot of the same traits in terms of being smart, being tough, being physical, but also has position versatility. These are the kind of guys that you see when they have those traits, they just seem to stick around. And then all of a sudden, 8 years later, you turn around and say, hey, wow, Wypler's still in the league. Hey, Patterson's still in the league. We've seen guys like this over and over again. I love these late round picks that have certain kind of makeup, particularly with offensive linemen.
And again, guys that have had those traits and have been successful at a program like Ohio State, that's a really good 6th round pick. Just your thoughts on Wypler?
Yeah, I describe Wypler pre-draft as a guy who can start for your team for 10 years, never make a Pro Bowl, but will also never make a team unhappy. So like a J.C. Tretter type player, which I think Tretter maybe made 1 Pro Bowl. I can't think off the top of my head, but a guy who's just a really solid starter. You don't notice him, and you're happy he's on your team. So that's what I kind of think of Luke Wypler, especially when you consider both Nick Harris and Dawson Deaton suffered pretty significant lower body injuries that put them out for the season in the preseason. Especially when you consider Ethan Posick has only had one good year in his career. It was last year, and he also missed a chunk of games with an injury. So even with Posick on a 3-year deal, there's some language written in with the dead money. If he's a post June 1 cut, even after this season, the Browns can get out of that contract and only eat $6 million in dead money. So if Posick bottoms out to the 5 years that he kind of put on tape before coming to Cleveland last year, they have a way out of his deal pretty easily. So I think Wypler has a chance to be the backup right away and be one snap away from starting, like we saw with Nick Harris last year. The first series of the preseason suffers that gruesome injury, and Ethan Posick is your starter before you know it. And I think Wypler could be in that position this year as a rookie, as a 6th round pick. Again, he doesn't have a trait that really stands out, but he fits like a glove in the scheme when he's asked to get wide. I think he's got a pretty strong anchor because he's got a nice center of gravity because he isn't the tallest dude in the world, but I think that helps him with natural leverage. I think he's a rock solid player. He's not going to bury people. He's not overly physical, but he's a technician. He's refined and he's smart. So I think CJ Stroud called him the smartest man he's ever been around. So that's pretty high praise. And so I think it's a heck of a pick in the 6th round.
Cory Kinnan from Browns Wire and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and we'll talk about some of the running backs that might be available. Sports4CLE, talking Browns. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, my name's Gaylord Barnes III. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. Die-hard Browns fan since 1964. I had a question for you guys in regards to running backs in free agency. Leonard Fournette is available. Kareem Hunt is available. And I was wondering what your take is on what running back the Browns might go with. Because Fournette is a Super Bowl winner, and he's got a lot of talent. And I think he would help the Browns out desperately. They need a running game going. Thanks a lot. Love your show. Have a great day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Cory, I don't know about you. I don't think Fournette is the way they're looking. He's a really good running back. I've heard Kareem Hunt, they've kind of moved on from him, and there are reports nationally they haven't completely closed the door. There's a lot of really good there's a lot of guys at running back that could be productive. That's a better way to say it than really good.
Yeah, so the way I need to look at it is, or I like to look at it is, like I think they need a back who does something different than what Jerome Ford and what Nick Chubb can do. And Nick Chubb is unbelievably balanced. We all know who Nick Chubb is. His eyes are excellent. His explosiveness is off the charts. And Jerome Ford is also a downhill kind of explosive guy. Not as agile as Chubb, but he's got that burst and he's explosive. So when I think of a third running back I'd want to add to the room, it would be somebody who can get outside a little bit more, who can contribute in the passing game a little bit more. And I don't think Fournette or Hunt really fit those bills. And when I look at those two backs specifically, I see guys that have lost a step, that have been kind of beat down a little bit, and aren't the explosive playmakers that they were, 2 years ago. I would have loved a guy like Jerick McKinnon before he decided to sign back with the Chiefs. I think he would have been the ideal, kind of third back. So I am interested. Do they add a third back now? Does that help Demetric Felton's skill set maybe fit in a little bit more? If they don't, it's kind of, again, like it is with linebacker, a little bit slim pickings right now, but I don't think Hunt or Fournette are the two types of backs that they'll look for if they do go and add another running back to the roster.
I agree with you wholeheartedly about McKinnon. Justin Jackson's a guy that you've heard that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. Here's one for you, though. This is from Dogs by Nature. Trade scenarios for Cordarrelle Patterson. So that's a Falcons running back. He was the one. And then Tyler Algier was the 1A. Algier had a 1,000-yard season. They drafted Bijan Robinson. So if Atlanta has thoughts of releasing Patterson, he would count $4.25 million against this year's cap. 1 year left on his deal. Browns could come along with a cheap trade offer, including some kind of pick swap to ensure they get their versatile offensive weapon. 6th-round pick for Patterson and a 7th-rounder is what they're throwing out here. Perhaps that way, Barry, kind of like, that might be why he traded for Baltimore's 6th-round pick, their reasoning. Falcons completed a similar trade with the Browns for Deion Jones last year. Now, Patterson is a guy that was a wide receiver, and then they switched him into the backfield, and he's pretty good. Yeah, I've heard of crazier things.
Yeah, I tend to think that Patterson's compensation would be a little bit steeper than that of what they gave up for Jones last year. But again, the Falcons are kind of a team that's tearing it down. I could see the Falcons very easily being in the running for Caleb Williams or Drake May next year, with Desmond Ridder starting all this year. So they're not a team that's ready to compete. And so I don't see them really holding on to aging assets like Patterson, like Jones. So a trade for him is very doable. I don't think it would be as cheap as what it would be for Jones a year ago. But I think he would fit in well with what the Browns are looking to do. One, they're looking to get more explosive through the air and on the ground, and he fits both of those bills. Two, I think it would create a situation where you wouldn't need to throw Cedric Tillman on the field if he's not ready. You wouldn't need to throw Jalen Darden on the field. I think it would make Jalen Darden's roster spot a little more uncomfortable. It would put you in a situation where you wouldn't need to throw David Bell on the field, because I think Patterson can do a lot of fun things on jet motion out of the slot and things like that too, as well as out of the backfield. So I definitely would see the fit in where the direction of the offense the Browns want to take it. But again, I also have a hard time seeing the Browns wanting to trade for a running back that's 30 plus. But, we'll see when it. But yeah.
I get you. This is also kind of interesting. So this is from overthecap.com. This is quarterbacks' average yearly salaries. We heard when they traded for Deshaun Watson, gave him the $46 million, the $240 guaranteed, how crazy it was. And the guarantee is still the most, but now Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Kyler Murray, so there's 5 of them, all make more than $46 million. And you can be sure Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert are going to be added to that list. The bottom line, and I get the issue with the guarantees. Most quarterbacks, nobody gets out from under a quarterback contract that is top 15, top half of the league. So the guarantee was to get him to sign, and now the contract doesn't look that bad.
Yeah, and then you have to include, like, Patrick Mahomes is going to get a new deal before his contract expires. Like, those guys who are below him, Josh Allen might. We'll see what happens as his play continues. But some of those names that are below him are going to get new deals before their contract is up. That's just how it works. It makes you feel a little bit better when you see Russell Wilson, when you see Kyler Murray kind of above him, based on where those two guys are at right now as well. But yeah, the guarantees are the guarantees, and that's going to be a talking point for now and forevermore, because it just is. He's the only quarterback. It's unprecedented. I get it. But his average per year is not devastating. It's right on board where quarterbacks need to be. And again, if Watson goes on, he plays well this year, plays well next year, he's going to get a new deal too. So he'll be up in the $52-51 million range if he plays, as well as the Browns have invested in him that they hope he plays. So yeah, where we're at now, we're sitting at 46. The Browns are not going to be strapped for cash. I think the salary cap will shrink for them, but they always navigate, void years, all that stuff really well. So I'm not concerned that they're going to get in the red, that they're going to be in negative cap space because of paying a quarterback. I'm not. So, and again, you mentioned Herbert, you mentioned Burrow, again, Mahomes. So he'll be around 9 or 10 before we know it, until he gets a new deal as well.
Yeah, and I mean, they're like the sports cars of the NFL. The price is just going up. The price per year for quarterbacks is not coming down anytime soon. All right, this from Pro Football Focus. Analyzing every fifth-year option decision. Browns' Jedrick Wills. Wills offers a high floor as a pass protector, earning 3 straight grades of 67.9 or better in that facet. And the Browns were smart to push an extension decision out one more offseason, as they spend big money across the rest of their roster. The way I looked at this is, if you're going to move on from him, you got to have a plan. There's no succession plan for Jed Wills at this point in time. So to not pick up that fifth-year option would have been a bad decision.
Yeah, and how I like to look at it is, I think it's natural to look at that 14 million number and say, oh, he's not worth 14 million. But I think a better way to phrase it is he's the 15th highest paid left tackle right now, or not even right now. That kicks in 2024. He's the 15th, so that would make him the 15th paid right now. But again, guys like Andrew Thomas, guys like Tristan Wirfs, they're going to get new deals. So he's going to be realistically around, the 17th, 18th highest paid left tackle. And that's fair when I kind of phrase it like that. Again, the Browns aren't in a position to create a need where they don't currently have one. So I thought it was a no-brainer to pick up Wills' fifth-year option. But again, with Wills, I don't think he's as bad as social media makes him out to be, or as bad as like the minority voices make him out to be. But I think he's as average as maybe the majority voices make him out to be. He's flashy. There are lapses in his game, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, I think he's an average left tackle, and he's making average left tackle money on this fifth-year option. The Browns are smart not to invest guaranteed money into the future in him yet. But again, he's got 2 years now. They gave him another 2 years, another year after this year. So he can make as much money as he wants to make. I think the talent is clearly there. I think his foot speed is tremendous. I think the way he uses his hands is tremendous when he can get his snatch trap working. So I really do believe he can make as much money as he wants to make, but there are still a lot of lapses in his game, and 1 or 2 plays a game that make people say, "What is this guy doing?" Even if that's not the overarching theme of that game. So there are some things to clean up, but I thought it was a no-brainer. Again, 17th paid left tackle, I think it was 25th overall tackle by the time his fifth-year option kicks in. So to me, that's a no-brainer.
Yep, I would agree with you. And I would agree, so far he's been average. Let's see if he can take it up a couple of notches the next couple of years. Cory, Kinnan, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out the other side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus some really early NFL Power Rankings. We'll tell you where the Browns stand. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. Dan in Maryland here. I was looking at our draft haul and our undrafted free agents, and I think we really have to give Andrew Berry credit for reading the board correctly. Ronnie Hickman, Lonnie Phelps, Mohamoud Diabate, these guys all had draftable grades on them from a variety of services. But, credit Andrew Berry for, reading the board correctly, letting those guys fall to undrafted status, grabbing them as free agents, in some cases giving them some pretty healthy bonuses to make sure he got them, and then using those draft picks instead to get an intriguing developmental quarterback, getting a center who I think everyone was shocked fell as far as he did, and then flipping a 7th-round pick for a 6th-round pick next year, so giving himself a little better draft capital next year. And then, on top of that, I don't know how he did it, but somehow he took the 42nd pick in the draft and turned it into 2 wide receivers, Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman. So good on him there, too. I realize Andrew Berry's not perfect. He makes his share of mistakes, just like any GM does. Let's give the guy credit. He really knows what he's doing. Anyhow, go Browns. Keep up the good work.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. And Corey, again, you never know how something's going to work out, but you can at least see the plan as it's unfolding. And I would say you could see that with Andrew Berry's past moves. Now, they didn't work out last year. Let's see how they work out. I understand what he's trying to do.
Yeah, the way that I put it before the draft is I think free agency really gave them the opportunity to draft based on value and not draft based on need. So again, they went out and they signed 3 defensive tackles. They went out and they signed a defensive end to start opposite Myles Garrett. They went out and they traded for Elijah Moore. Then they signed Marquise Goodwin. So I think they really went out. Those are the 3 big positions of need. And so when they came on the clock at 74, they didn't have to say, we have to get a wide receiver. We have to get a defensive end. We have to get a defensive tackle. They could look at their board and say, like, okay, who's the best player on our board, and we'll take that guy. And I think that's what they did. And it happened time and time and again. So, that's why you end up with a guy like Luke Wypler at the 190th pick, is because I think Berry went in addressing value over position. And I think, again, that's the great way to draft. And I think people kind of overestimate how hard drafting is. Like, there's an article out there that has said that only 30% of first rounders get second contracts with the team that drafts them. So like even first round picks are bust at a very high level. So when you get into the 3rd round, you're hoping that those guys turn into rotational players. When you get into day 3, you're hoping they contribute on special teams. So, when we look at guys like James Hudson, when we look at guys like Harrison Bryant, those are 2 guys I'd say have already outperformed their draft capital because they've started games for you. They've contributed like in pretty significant manners for you, despite being day 3 picks. And again, when you get into the 4th round, you hope that guy's a special teamer. So I think Berry's done a better job than maybe he gets credit for. And especially this year, I think he did a great job bringing it full circle of really attacking value over positional need.
Yep, I would agree with you. This from Pro Football Focus. NFL Power Rankings after the draft. So number 1, they have the Chiefs. Number 2, the Eagles. 3, the 49ers. They have the Chargers, 8. The Browns, number 9. And the Ravens, 10. Biggest impact player from the draft? Siaka Ika, who posted 76.4 PFF pass rushing grade and an 11.6 pass rush win rate in 2022, will morph their defense into a force to be reckoned with. And you see the pre-draft ranking there was 21st. So they move up. 9th is kind of where I think that's a really fair higher-end ranking for them heading into the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all expect them to be competitive this year. They need to be competitive this year. And they have the roster for it. And I think they drafted well for it. Again, I'm not really that worried about the defense. They brought in a new defensive coordinator. I think they addressed key positions of need. Again, I think they're hoping that an improved defensive front that doesn't keep that keeps guards from climbing to the second level right off the ball helps linebacker play. And so I'm not super concerned about the defense. What's hard is, the majority of the teams above them are all in the AFC. So the quarterback gauntlet in the AFC is just unbelievable. So, but again, even if you can get a wild card berth, that wild card berth is a lottery ticket. And once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Again, we saw it the year in 2020, like they were a drive away. They were a stop of Chad Henne away from potentially going to the AFC Championship game in 2020. So once you get in, anything can happen. And I think they're in a perfect position to get in and see what happens. So I think that's where you want to be, even if it's not a division title in 2023.
All right, I know you've written an article for BrownsWire.com. 3 players who are going to have a challenge to hang on to their roles in 2023. Jordan Elliott, Harrison Bryant, James Hudson. Take us through the kind of thought process and the rationale behind your article here.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess starting with Jordan Elliott, that's kind of the obvious one. They signed 3 defensive tackles and they drafted 1, so they brought in 4 new bodies to that room for a guy who started a year ago to now be pushed out to, hey, you got to fight for a roster spot. So he's automatically losing that starting job, I think. Unless he really comes in camp and Jim Schwartz really likes him. It seems hard for me to say Jordan Elliott is starting next to Dalvin Tomlinson, so that's already a demotion. But again, with Hurst, with Hill, with Ika, and then you got to consider a guy like Winfrey, who was just drafted a year ago, who has a high ceiling, a high athletic ceiling if he can get it together. That's a steep drop off from a guy who was pretty much penned in as a starter entering training camp a year ago. So moving on to Harrison Bryant. The offense really wants to get more explosive. I thought Harrison Bryant had an opportunity to prove he can be a tight end too, because he had handled tight end 3 responsibilities pretty well the first 2 years of his career. But I think he's proved that, he's a tight end 3. He's a guy you can motion to the backfield. He's a guy who you bring in 13 personnel looks, but he's not a guy. And again, if you look at his athletic testing, his arms aren't extraordinarily long, so he really struggles to separate up the seam. He's not going to burn anybody vertically. So they brought in Jordan Akins, who has proven to be a dominant red zone threat, who's proven to be a guy who can go up and get the football in the air, who's proven to be a guy who can pull away from linebackers down the seam. So I thought that signing was a really big indication of where they want the offense to go. And that's not in a direction that really meshes with Harrison Bryant's skill set super well. And then moving on to James Hudson. I still think James Hudson's probably your swing tackle this year. If Jack Conklin goes down, if Jedrick Wills goes down, but DeJuan Jones's talent is real. There's reasons he fell to the 4th round. We've heard all about the concerns about his work ethic, the concerns about his weight, like that's out there, and that's real as well. But I thought he had 2nd round tape. I think the way he moves for his size is special. His foot speed, his ability to set at 370 pounds is unreal. So I think he's probably starting if a guy like Jack Conklin goes down. Maybe not left side. Like, I don't know if he can kick left, but if Jack Conklin, who has a lot of injury history, like I would be more willing to start DeJuan Jones over James Hudson in a case like that. So that was kind of my rationale for those 3 players.
Yeah, and I understand completely all 3 of them, and I agree with you with Jones. I think once Bill Callahan gets a hold of Jones and refines a couple of things, they may have something pretty special in DeJuan Jones. Cory Kinnan, as always, man, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Cory.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Cory Kinnan, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff, brownswire.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Tim, you wrote an article. What do you think Cedric Tillman brings the Browns?
Well, first thing, obviously, is size. I mean, he's going to be the biggest receiver on the team the second he steps on the field. 6'3", 215 pounds, kind of a true red zone threat, maybe something the Browns haven't really had in a while outside of David Njoku. We all remember, of course, had that huge touchdown against the Buccaneers in Week 11. In the 11th game of the season, that really, gave the Browns a little bit of playoff hope before Deshaun Watson came back. But what I think Tillman is, he's a big receiver. And as I've said before, I feel like he really understands how to use his size. Like, he's not just a big guy who plays like somebody smaller. He understands how to get shield defenders away from him. And in the end zone, he knows how to box defenders out. His hands are tremendous. And he's got more speed than I think people realize. He's not super fast, but he's fast enough as based on just his 40 time, about 4 seconds. So Tillman's certainly got a lot of good tools to work with. Maybe, obviously, in this situation, the Browns are, with Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones on the roster, plenty of depth in front of them. The Browns could take their time with Cedric Tillman and let him, develop and become more refined, which I think he still kind of needs to do.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. This is from Mike Clay, and he's ranking the receivers throughout the NFL. He goes Bengals 1, and of course that's Jamar Chase and Boyd and T. Higgins. Seahawks 2, Dolphins 3, Eagles 4, Cowboys 5. You see Vikings in at 10, and then you flip it, and the Browns check in at 21. Ravens at 18, Steelers at 17. That seems awfully low. And again, this is the receiving room, if you will. So the top 5, top 6 receivers, and they're listed out there. And I just thought that was kind of low for the Browns at 21.
Yeah, I mean, lower than Baltimore, I don't see it, because right now you could argue Baltimore's best receiver is Odell Beckham Jr., and he's coming off a torn ACL, and we have no idea what he kind of looks like because he hasn't played a game. He missed the entire 2022 season recovering from that knee injury that he suffered in the Super Bowl with the Rams. So I have to think the Browns' ceiling is so much higher than 21st overall. I mean, you have Amari Cooper as one of the better, who's a very good number 1 receiver. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones continuing to emerge. I think he's got a chance to have a really good year in the last year of his rookie deal and potentially get a big payday, whether that's in Cleveland or somewhere else down the road. Elijah Moore, I think, is going to be better in Cleveland. I think Marquise Goodwin is a solid veteran. I think David Bell will take a step forward. And I just mentioned Cedric Tillman, who's got starter upside, could certainly, I think, be a very good number 2 receiver in this league. 21 just feels really low to me. And maybe it's just because, especially last year, playing with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, they didn't have a lot of opportunities to show themselves because at that time they were leaning so much more on the run with Nick Chubb and company, which made sense because of Jacoby Brissett as a quarterback. But with Deshaun Watson, coming back off suspension, getting those 6 games of rust knocked off, a full offseason work with, you would expect the Browns will air it out much more. And by proxy, you would imagine the receivers are going to show so much more of who they are, and potentially for the better.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's awfully low, but we'll see. They get to prove it on the field. What do you think? Another one of the rookies, and I know you've written an article about it. What do you think Isaiah McGuire brings to that defensive end spot?
I think he's a very well-rounded edge rusher. May not be kind of an elite top-end guy, but, for a guy you're drafting in the 4th round, you're not expecting that. He's a guy who's got the upside to be a solid starter in the NFL, maybe get, I think, 7 to 8 sacks potentially, which would be, an outstanding pick for the Browns. Got burst, got bend, got some speed and power. And, I mean, I even wrote about it. He's an analytical darling. Last year, a grade from PFF of 81.2. That includes a pass rush grade of 81.9 and a pass rush win rate of 17.2%. And that's a pretty high number for an edge rusher, especially in the SEC, considering the competition he went up against. So he should come in and I think compete for reps very early, as soon as, the first set of padded practices come up, he's got a chance, I think, to really push for playing time. And maybe within a year or two, he can be a starter. But I think he's a guy that just adds some more depth and versatility to this pass rush group.
Yeah, along those lines, this is from Dog Pound Daily. So an early look at training camp battles for 2023. And the first one, Alex Wright against Isaiah McGuire. They're also talking about a tackle battle between Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst, the QB3 battle between Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kellen Mond, and then wide receiver 4, Marquise Goodwin and David Bell. But let's start right into Isaiah McGuire. And again, the mindset is let's bring in competition and make everybody better. And yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was a theme of Andrew Berry's draft this year. Is he drafted a lot of guys for depth, and there's going to be some competition going on this year, and that's a good thing, I think, for the Browns. You know, to continue to push the young players, try and get them to a higher level, and I think that's what we're seeing, particularly in this edge battle. I think McGuire, he seems like a little more refined coming into the NFL than Alex Wright, but what Wright has an advantage over McGuire is the fact that he's already played a full season in the NFL. He has an understanding of the grind in the NFL, what you have to do to win battles up front. Obviously didn't have a sack last season, but he came into the NFL far more raw, I think, than McGuire. This is going to be an important offseason for him to kind of continue to show growth, show the potential that he had when the Browns took him in the third round in 2022. And there's a lot of it there, especially from a physical perspective. It's a matter of, can he continue to develop technically so that once he has the technical aspect of his position down, that's when I think, the athletic ability is something that can really be shown through.
What are those other three, do you think, are you watching closely, the other three position battles that they mentioned?
I think defensive tackle, because right now the Browns need a second starter out there. Obviously Dalvin Tomlinson's locked into one of those spots, and that second starter battle is going to be so interesting to watch. Maybe it comes down to those guys like Tristan Hill and Maurice Hurst. Hill's obviously been around the league a couple times, not great, but solid. At least he's a veteran who's been there. Maurice Hurst has, came into the NFL with a lot of potential, but he's been plagued by injuries, so it's been tough to kind of see him not be able to live up to it, just because he has not been able to stay healthy this year. Obviously they drafted Siaki Ika. Who knows what happens with the defensive tackles they drafted before Ika? When you talk about Perion Winfrey, Tommy Togiai, and Jordan Elliott, who knows who's going to be kind of in that mix. So it's going to be that's going to be a fascinating battle. Also, that the hierarchy at receiver is something I'm so interested in, because now that you add Cedric Tillman to this room, now you have potentially, if you're the Browns, 6 guys you could put out on the field. Bell and Goodwin are guys that can very well play on the interior, and they play different kind of styles. Goodwin, although he's in his early 30s, still got some speed to him. And David Bell is very much a precise guy who knows how to get open. Didn't really get a lot of opportunities till down the stretch in the season when Watson took over as quarterback, when they went to more 3-4 receiver looks. So that one's going to be a sneaky battle. But all in all, I think for Browns fans, this could be a very fun training camp to watch, because there's going to be such good competition. I think pretty much all over the roster. You look around the roster, you look at these position units, there's going to be competition, and that's the important thing the Browns need to continue, like I said, continue to push these young players, continue to develop them, and the more pressure makes diamonds, as they always say.
Yeah, and the thing about that is the training camp battles, that's a sign of depth, so that's always a good thing as well. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, take a look at some more rankings in this early part of the year, and this one's a little interesting. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, folks. Between the draft and free agency, Andrew Berry has equipped this roster with a well-rounded, deep, and talented group. I like this team's ability to match up with anyone. We've handled Joe Burrow and the Bengals at a high percentage clip recently, and now we have way more talent. We can play bully ball versus Pittsburgh, beat them at their own game if needed with this added size and power. And we've roughed up Lamar Jackson and the Ravens recently with our speed. Now we're tougher, too. It's going to be up to the coaches to put our players in position to take advantage of these numerous favorable matchups. Let's go Browns!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, I think you're going to see more of that, especially defensively. I think Jim Schwartz will change things up based on who the Browns are playing, and I think it will be more obvious than it was under Joe Woods.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how, much experience Jim Schwartz has as a defensive coordinator. He's done it for so many years and so many different stops, particularly Tennessee and Philadelphia. So this is a guy who knows, how to coach up a defense, how to get them ready for all kinds of different opponents. And, that caller's got a really good point, talking about the depth on this roster. It seems like, at least right now, there's not super glaring holes. There are questions you still want to figure out the answer to. As far as, second starter at defensive tackle, will there be kind of a breakthrough player at linebacker? What about safety? Outside of, will Grant Delpit continue to evolve and something like that? Who's going to be the number 2 running back, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I think every team kind of has those questions. It always comes down to just, who performs the best. And now I think it's gonna be fascinating because this AFC is so strong. It's so deep. Really, you could pick about 10, 11 teams that have a really good shot to get the playoff. The Browns are definitely one of those teams. So I'm looking forward to kind of this battle, how it pans out in the next few months, how this roster continues to grow, develop. Andrew Berry may not be done for all we know. Maybe another edge rusher comes in potentially. I mean, we've seen, he's already gotten Rodney McLeod after the draft. This roster could still add another piece or two, but right now, I think if you're a Browns fan, you have to like where they are heading into the offseason program.
Yeah, I would agree. This is from the Bleacher Report, ranking every defense after the 2023 NFL Draft. 49ers 1, Eagles 2, Jets 3. They rank the Browns at 13. 2022 yardage rank 14th, 2022 points allowed rank 20th. The Browns have one of the better cornerback rooms in the NFL and a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Myles Garrett. Cleveland should have a good defense with the potential to be great. I agree with that, but we also said that last year, and it got short-circuited. I think Andrew Berry corrected the challenge with the smaller defensive tackles. So I'm very anxious to see what Jim Schwartz can do with this defense.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the biggest difference maker right there is Jim Schwartz. I think a huge upgrade over Joe Woods, who I thought, this defense really took a step back in 2022, and a lot of guys underperformed. As I said at that point, when you have almost across the board underachievement, that points to coaching, and that's got to get better. And I think, just the fact that you're going from a guy in Woods who looked over his head at times to a guy in Schwartz who's been a defensive coordinator for a long time, been a head coach, won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. It's not always going to fix everything because you're still win games with players more than schemes or anything like that. But I think he could certainly, bring a different attitude, a different mindset to this defense. And as we've seen Andrew Berry really do really interesting defensive tackle, trying to make sure that, run defense isn't an issue, because if run defense is not an issue, if it's solid, it doesn't necessarily have to be elite, but if it's good enough to get you into passing situations, then if you're the Browns, it plays into the strengths of your defense, which is those corners, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, and adding Juan Thornhill in the secondary to next to Grant Delpit at safety, who really came on at the end of last season. Myles Garrett getting turned loose in the pass rush, some interesting depth at that position. It's smart to, put that emphasis on there, because you don't necessarily need to make the run defense elite. Just make it solid, because the defense has been geared up to defend the pass. And in this AFC in particular, if you can defend the pass extremely well and defend the run just well enough, I think you're going to be in good position to have success.
I would agree. This is from The Athletic. NFL executive on what the Cedric Tillman selection means for the Browns. And this executive said, wasn't high on Tillman, but I can see them saying we want to diversify the group. It feels like they're trying to change their MO to be less run-centric. Maybe they said, okay, we got to get a receiver instead of maybe targeting a better player. I think he gives them something that they needed that isn't stated there. He gave them a guy that is a red zone target, that is big and physical with a wide catch radius. They didn't have that. I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones is kind of that, but Tillman's more of a red zone target with a bigger catch radius.
Yeah, and if you take Peoples-Jones out of the equation, this is suddenly a small receiver group with the exception of Tillman. I mean, Amari Cooper's not very big. Elijah Moore is sub 6 foot. Marquise Goodwin sub 6 foot. Just not a lot of big guys in this receiver group outside of Peoples-Jones and now Cedric Tillman. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that Andrew Berry and the Browns want to have a very balanced receiver room, guys who can handle multiple different situations. Like if you're in the red zone and you need a jump ball, you now have 2 receivers in addition to David Njoku that you're able to win with potentially. If you got tight man coverage reporting against, you got 2 pretty decent a very good route runner, Amari Cooper, and a guy in David Bell who knows how to separate, showed flashes of as a rookie. And then if you need deep burners, you got Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin, who both have shown the ability to stretch the field in their career. So you're looking at guys who can beat a lot of different things. And I think if you're the Browns, the saying is variety is the spice of life. So, receivers who do different things, it just kind of puts different tools in the toolbox for Kevin Stefanski in this offense.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. One more segment, Talking Browns, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Tim, I know you wrote an article. Take me through what you thought of the selection of Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback by Andrew Berry.
I thought it was a smart move. I know people are going to say, why are you taking a quarterback? Deshaun Watson's your quarterback potentially. And yeah, that's true. But at some point, you also have to develop a backup quarterback, as we saw with the San Francisco 49ers with Brock Purdy backing up Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. You need depth at quarterback because you need a guy who's ready to play because they're always one play away when your starter gets hurt. And I thought Thompson-Robinson was a great fit for this team because he has skills that are very similar to Deshaun Watson. He's mobile. He's accurate. He processes very well. He's even got a little improvisation in his tool bag. What I think it can hamper him, at least right away, and really before you should even be seeing the field, is he's got to put on some weight. He's only just a shade over 200 pounds, so he's got to put on some more weight. But I think, there's a lot of interesting tools to work with. He's a guy who I think, has a chance to be a good backup quarterback, maybe fill in as a spot starter at some point. And I think, sometimes for a backup quarterback, that's all you need. You don't necessarily need 2 starters. You need a guy who can come in there, fill in a pinch if necessary, and, try to lead the team in a position to win, and then rely on the talent around and help kind of get you back across the finish line. And the other thing I think about when I think about backup quarterbacks is you want a guy who, when your starter gets injured and you put your backup into the game, that you don't have to drastically change your offense. It can be very similar. It could be when you have quarterbacks who have very similar skill sets, you don't have to change too much in the offense. And I think that's beneficial to the guys playing around the quarterback because we saw, particularly last season, how different the offense was scheme-wise from what they were doing with Jacoby Brissett to what they did with Deshaun Watson in the final 6 games. So if you can bridge that gap enough to where it's very similar. I mean, obviously you're going down in, talent level, but you could still keep the same type of scheme situation going on there. Yeah. The other thing is you hope he develops into an asset. If he plays really well, you hope you can trade him and get another draft pick for him because he can't break into the starting spot.
This is Peter King's Power Rankings for the NFL. Eagles, they're in a tier by themselves. Can't find a weakness. Tier 2, they've got Super Bowl vibes. Chiefs, Bengals, 49ers, and Bills. There's another one that's kind of on the cusp. And then we get to the tier, if all goes right. And they have the Browns checking in at 17. I think Deshaun Watson is still good. But how can you tell after seeing him play 6 highly mediocre games in his last 28 months? Yeah, I guess if you want to take the critical look at it, you could ask that. But you did see flashes pretty much in each of the games where you looked at it like, okay, we haven't seen that from the quarterback position. The problem was the consistency, and the offense wasn't tailored to Deshaun Watson.
Right, 100%. And I mean, I think, like you said in those 6 games, he showed flashes of the quarterback he was in Houston. That isn't gone. I think whether it can all come back in a consistent way for Deshaun Watson, where he can keep stringing great games together, one after another, kind of remains to be seen. And if he can do that, then the Browns truly become a true contender in the AFC. It's dependent on what kind of quarterback Deshaun Watson becomes, in 2023. That's really going to determine just how good this team is. And, it's just, it comes down to consistency. And, when you don't have to worry about, preparing one scheme, for one quarterback who's going to play, the first more than half a season, and then have your second scheme waiting for your regular starter when he comes back for the final 6 games. You don't have to worry about that. It's one offense you can practice basically from now till the start of the season, rep that, and then you can get more consistency, more chemistry built in with Deshaun Watson as receivers, which I think has also been upgraded in a big way to really help him out. Again, getting Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin to have some speed, giving them a big young target in Cedric Tillman. Certainly, I think it's an offense that should fit Deshaun Watson better. And I think because of that, there's, more room for him to play well. The only thing is he's got to do is he's got to go out and prove it. We're not going to get the answers to that until mid-September.
Yeah. And the other thing is it has the potential to be a very explosive offense. So we'll see. So rookie minicamp begins Friday, but Thursday, the NFL schedule is finally confirmed to be released. There was some question. It is official. The 2023 NFL regular season schedule will be coming out Thursday, May 11th. So 3 days down the road, we'll know who's any national games, Monday night games, Thursday night games, Sunday night games. It'll be interesting to see, and the NFL has made the schedule release into a big deal.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. That goes to show the popularity of the NFL. That there's a special that millions of people are going to watch. It's not even about a game; it's about when games are going to be played. And I think that's that's one of the craziest things about the explosion of the growth of the NFL over the past few years is they've obviously tried to have something happen every single month that, keeps the NFL in the spotlight, to keep it in the public eye. And I guess this is a fun way to kind of do it. And what's interesting is we know the 17 opponents the Browns are playing. We know they've got 9 home games, 8 away games, and, obviously some good home teams coming to Cleveland and Jacksonville, the Jets, the Niners, and the Titans in particular in addition to the division opponents. So it could be a pretty tough home schedule, not to mention Justin Fields, Kyler Murray will also be playing in Cleveland later this season. So obviously this is going to be interesting to see how it all lines up, and it's just going to be the other thing I'm going to be interested in is how many nationally televised games the Browns are going to get this season. You would imagine based on talent alone, they could get a couple, especially because of that schedule, they could get a handful. So I think that's kind of a barometer. Those to me are always a barometer of what the NFL thinks of your team and how good they think you can be.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, before I let you go, this from Doug Poundaly. 4 Browns who could be in their final season with the franchise in 2023. Number 4, Harrison Bryant. Number 3, Jacob Phillips. Number 2, safety Grant Delpit. And number 1, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I get all of those. Peoples-Jones, I think they would like back. He's developed pretty nicely, but he may he may play himself into a bigger contract than they want to give him.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking for a consolation out of that, the Browns aren't big spenders of free agency. You get a nice compensatory pick in, I think it's 2025 potentially if Donovan Peoples-Jones goes somewhere and gets a big payday. And that wouldn't be a big shocker, I guess, because we've seen the value of receivers really go up throughout, the last couple of years, particularly last offseason when guys like Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown got massive contracts with their current teams. So, I mean, we've seen Donovan Peoples-Jones continue to progress a little more every season. He's gotten better and better. And I think, again, with more opportunities this season with Deshaun Watson and the Browns like throwing the football a lot more than they had in previous seasons, especially last year. Certainly more opportunities for Peoples-Jones to show who he is and show he can be a quality number two. Maybe potentially someone would take a chance on him as a number one. It'll be fascinating to see, what kind of money he'll end up getting next offseason if he and the Browns don't agree to a contract extension.
Tim Bielik, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. As always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.